In the winter of 1984, while I was a high school junior at Sandy Union High School in Sandy, Oregon, Dennis Ray Coy, born May 5th, 1979, the technique coach for the varsity wrestling team, began stalking and assaulting me. The first time I was attacked by Coach Coy was after school one afternoon in November 1984. It was after school, but before practices had started. I was on my way to basketball and stopped by the cafeteria to get a snack and a soda. I stopped first to chat with my friends, Rod Smith and Art Skipper, wrestling team members. Suddenly I was lifted off of my feet, up into the air, and flung down onto the wrestling mat. A huge man landed on top of me and began squeezing me so hard, pushing his weight on top of me, that I began blacking out. Quickly, Coach Coy pushed himself off of me, and while standing over me, ordered his wrestlers to get running, and ordered me to get off of his mat, get away from his wrestlers, and get out of his wrestling room and stay out. I left the wrestling room as soon as I could catch my breath. I was pretty shaken but not injured. I was more freaked out and humiliated, and the fear that if my parents found out, I would get in a lot of trouble. In the early spring of 1985, on the afternoon of Aaron George's 16th birthday party, Rod Smith came to pick me up to take me to buy liquor. Coach Coy was with them, and he was still drunk from earlier that morning. He still smelled like stale alcohol and BO. His hair was very greasy, and his teeth were yellow and gray. He was a very big, ugly man. Coach Coy was the adult that was going to buy us teenagers alcohol. This was something that Coach Coy did often for the children who wrestled on teams that he coached. Feeding children alcohol is one of Coach Coy's defaults. I gave Coach Coy $30 to buy as many fifths of Bacardi as he could get. After the alcohol was purchased, Rod Smith drove us all back to my house to drop me off. I got out and Coach Coy announced that he was going to hang out with me and instructed Rod to come back and get him in an hour. I explained that he couldn't come in, that my parents were not home, but he refused to listen to me and marched into my house. We didn't really talk about anything. Coach Coy spent that entire hour assaulting me. Assault meaning he hip-tossed me onto the floor upstairs in the living room, on the living room couch, and on my bedroom floor. He knocked the wind out of me twice, which was obviously intentional. He was a technique coach. He outweighed me by about 30 to 50 pounds. I wasn't putting up a fight. I was only resisting him and telling him no and to please stop. While laying his weight on top of me, he threatened me and sexually assaulted me. When I refused him or disagreed with him, Coach Coy would push his weight onto me, crushing me until it was impossible to breathe. Most of our conversation went like this. Me. My parents are going to be home. You need to leave or I'll get in trouble. Coach Coy, kiss me like an American. And then he would open his mouth and put it on top of mine and force his tongue into my mouth and force air into my mouth, so I had to open my mouth. Me, if I get caught with you in the house, my parents are going to be really mad and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. Coach Coy, I'm not afraid of your parents. Say you're going to be my girlfriend. Me, I'm afraid of my parents. Please get off of me. Coach Coy, I'll get off of you when you kiss me like an American. Coach Coy finally left when my mom came home. I was able to sneak him out of my bedroom window, and he ran up the driveway where Rod Smith and Danny Emerson had been waiting for him. I was shaken up again, but I really didn't know what to do about it. I couldn't tell Danny and Rod. Coach Coy abused and tortured them too. Everybody knew that he would hold down smaller wrestlers and bite their scalps, affectionately calling it a scalp bite. He beat on wrestlers, and he encouraged other wrestlers to do the same. He held down Danny Emerson and cut his hair with tape scissors because Danny Emerson's hair was too long for team pictures. Coach Coy wasn't a bully. He was an alcoholic, a sadist, and a predator. I could not tell my parents. It was a hard rule at our house that nobody was allowed in our house when our parents weren't home. My brothers and I never broke this rule. I would have been beaten with the paddle and grounded for at least 9 months, factoring in the involvement of purchasing of alcohol and me planning to go to a party. I couldn't tell my high school guidance counselor Ron Calhoun, as my high school guidance counselor also happened to be the head wrestling coach and Coach Coy's friend and boss. The counseling office secretary was the wife of Chuck Kearney Sr., an assistant wrestling coach. I went to school with their 3 sons, little Chuck, Brett, and Scott, who also wrestled for Coach Calhoun, Coach Coy, and Coach Coy's brother Louis Coy, also known as Coach Coy, at Sandy Union High School. The whole thing was very scary and confusing, but I had figured that I'd dodged a bullet and this was a one-off type deal, and that I'd certainly never be in a social situation with Coach Coy again. I planned to continue to completely avoid Coach Coy at school after he had thrown me and knocked the wind out of me and chased me out of the cafeteria a couple times the year before.